Alright, let's talk about Group C and racing sims for all of like 2 minutes. That's pretty much all I need to get you around the track here. These are the cars that everyone wants to drive in a racing sim until they actually try driving them in a racing sim and realize they're really bad at Group C and never want to touch them again. I've raced these cars a couple of different times on like Sim Racing System and in various online leagues, and what always happens every single time is usually the first handful of races are really well attended because everyone's just hyped to drive these, and then you actually have to race them competitively, and 3/4 of the guys who signed up just don't come back. We're going to fix that for you. Also, what I'm about to tell you here works everywhere. It doesn't matter what sim you're playing. The setup convention is the same across games like AC and AMS2, so don't worry. What you're learning here applies everywhere. So why do guys in Sims struggle with these cars? Their throttle control is not very good. That's it. These cars are really light. They put down a ton of power. Driving is hard. There's two ways to fix this. It's really easy. The first way is for the novices or guys who just want to get around the track and just turn shakedown laps by themselves. It's a quick fix. What I've noticed across AC, PCARS 2, as well as AMS2 recently is that the diff preload value in the setup option screen is just 3 times higher than it needs to be. I personally don't agree with running a high diff preload value. So essentially the diff is locking too early when applying power and you're just shooting off the racetrack. You can set this value to like 1/3 of whatever it is in the setup screen. So if it's like 150 to start, just turn it to 50 and you'll be fine. You can also lengthen first and second gears if you want, but it's not necessary. The diff preload is the magic fix to make these cars compliant and not try and kill you, and I don't know why across a couple of games now, diff preload set so high. If you want to get both some serious speed out of these cars as well as some serious handling, they actually go hand in hand with these things, you need to start approaching the setup screen a bit differently and think of the setup screen not as a magic combination of the correct numbers, but rather a way to solve a problem you're experiencing out on the racetrack. There's no magic spring rate that's going to fix everything. You're instead trying to use a combination of setup options to accomplish something. So what are we trying to accomplish with our Group C setup? Well, across AC, PCARS 2, AMS2, and even Raceroom kind of has this as well. All Group C cars in their default setups exhibit the exact same characteristics. Kind of crazy that way. I've noticed they all have really big springs in the front, which makes the car understeer through the center of the corner. And then, of course, as we talked about before, the differential is way too aggressive, so the car just snaps on corner exit when you give it, like, half throttle. On default setups, the car basically won't turn through the center of the corner. And then on corner exit, you have to spend way too much time babying the throttle, which is just not an efficient way to drive, right? So in the garage area, we want to accomplish, first of all, giving it a more pointy nose and dealing with our throttle control issues where we can just mat the throttle off the corner. How do we do that? Pretty much the first thing I do is immediately take the big front springs out and replace them with smaller springs, not the minimum value, but close to it. And then to make sure the car doesn't scrape, I immediately set the front bump to minimum and the front rebound to maximum. Screwing with the car's balance even further, I'll actually take out the front sway bar completely if the game lets me, or just set it on the lowest possible value, and max out the rear sway bar. So we have the super soft, lazy front end, and the rear of the car is just insanely stiff. At a glance, this probably sounds like it's going to be a fucking death trap, which is why I've aptly labeled that section with the smiley face, because it is. Now again, remember what I said about using the setup screen to accomplish something. I counteract how insane the balance of the car is with the weakest differential power, so the car's really lazy on throttle, and the strongest differential coast value, so when I lift off the throttle, there's no lift-off oversteer at all. And as you can imagine, I also take out diff preload. These two extremes, the sway bars that induce crazy oversteer, and then the differential settings that induce crazy amounts of understeer, actually neutralize each other, and you now, as a result, have a balanced setup with pretty amazing turn-in, which is fucking fantastic. This is actually realistic, too. Where I got the idea from was actually how they set up the Nissan GTP ZXT from 80s IMSA in real life. The car didn't have a front sway bar. So I basically just paired that with modern open-wheel differential settings. Just really weak power and aggressive coast. That is the magic trick.